Welcome everyone to the Ferrari 355 GTS. One of the most amazing cars ever made, in my opinion. And definitely one of the best sounding cars ever made. Oh. I'm just going to shut up for a minute because oh boy. I hope you can hear that with the roof off. I'm guessing this car is a lot, in many ways, like the Ducati 916. It's almost impossible to record the audio in such a way that does it justice, just because it's got such a unique sound, and the reverberations that it creates off of everything. It's one of those things you really need to experience in person to really fully get. Most 355 videos, they sound very shrill and screechy, and to be fair, the engine note is very high-pitched, but there's a lot more meat and potatoes to it in the real world. So yeah, this is the 355 GTS. In my opinion, it is the best V8 non-hypercar Ferrari has ever made. The best V8 period they ever made, in my opinion, is the F40, but this is the best road car, mid-engine V8 they've ever made. If you're 12, you're gonna say, oh, well, Leon Loco, the 488 is much faster, and well, yeah, it is. It's also nowhere near as enjoyable to drive, and nowhere near as interesting to drive or look at, in my opinion. And you can feel free to disagree with that, but odds are good if you do disagree with that, you haven't driven either of these cars, so shut up. Anyway, this one's a little bit different from many of the car reviews I do, in that this is actually my car. This is my 355. I've owned this car for just about 10 years now, getting on there. I bought it, 355s hadn't quite hit the bottom of their depreciation curve when I got it, but it was a very clean car, very low miles. It still only got 23,000 miles on it, even though I drive it quite a bit. And it was just a good buy. It was the right car at the right time. It's the right color. It's Rosa Corsa on tan, which is just what you buy a Ferrari in unless you're insane. Yeah, it was just the right car at the right time, so I said, screw it. Not my first 355. I had a Spider prior to this. Many years ago, I bought the Spider when it was new, whereas this car was very not new when I bought it, but still well loved and well maintained. And nowadays, this car is worth quite a lot more than I paid for it. They're starting to appreciate now, especially the rare ones. And the GTS, which is the Targa roof, you know, it's not the full convertible, but this big panel comes out of the roof, are the rarest cars, and they are generally the most desirable cars, followed by the Berlinetta hardtop, and then the Spider, of which there are 11 million. And the Spider's just still a great car, don't get me wrong. It doesn't have that C-pillar, you know, that beautiful back half of the car. But it also is, the flip side of that is, with the Berlinetta, it's a hardtop. You know, that is what it is. If you're going to drive the car like you stole it, if you're going to track the car, the Berlinetta is probably the best option, as it is more rigid and handles a bit better. But the GTS is the best road car, in my opinion. You get the looks, you get the sound, you get the million miles of sky, but you also, you know, it's not just another Spider. I mean, it looks a lot better than the Spiders, in my opinion. So the GTS is the car I wanted when I was a kid. So it's the car I bought when I was a big stupid kid. And I do love it very much. So what makes this thing so good? Really, it's the engine. This is one of the last Ferraris made such that, you know, you're buying the engine and they kind of throw the car in for free. The car is largely secondary to the engine, and this thing, when it came out, was just from another planet. You know, 375 horsepower stock out of a 3.5 liter V8 that spins to almost 9,000 RPM in 1995, which is the year of this car. That was insane. This was the highest volumetric efficiency of any engine for a good long while, until I think the Honda S2000 beat it slightly. So over 100 horsepower per liter, which out of an NAV8 that's actually drivable, that's not a full race engine, is pretty impressive. And you get 5 valves per head. That sounds like this. 5 valves per cylinder, rather. Called the Cinco Valvule for lots of fucking valves. Oh, nothing sounds like this car. Oh, one of the recording tricks I'm trying is I've actually stuck a microphone right into the intake track on one side of the engine, so I don't know if that's going to be like just straight distortion or if it's actually going to sound good, but we will see. But yeah, the 5 valve per cylinder arrangement, you get 3 intakes and 2 exhausts. That's one of the tricks they use to make the engine make as much power as it could. Really is unique. They only did it for this car and the 360, and then they went back to 4 valves. That's why, and more displacement, obviously. That's why if you look at like a 458 or a 488 or even the 430, the engine sound is much more guttural. It's a much lower pitch. It doesn't scream as much. And to me, that kind of kills some of the character of a V8 Ferrari. I mean, the V12s are a different thing again. They sound very, very different from, well, anything else, even other V12s. But, oh, fuck off. If you have a Testarossa or something, or you have a 599, you know it's a Ferrari V12. They sound like absolutely nothing else in the known universe. But a lot of V8s sound kind of similar. Like if you get a 430, for example, it does not sound, unless you get a really silly exhaust on it, it does not sound that much different from, say, a previous generation M3 V8. It's screechy, it's flat plane, it's very guttural, but it doesn't sound like this thing. This thing has its own soul. I'm going to start using many Italian verbs, but that it is what it is. That's why you buy this car. That's why driving this car is special. It's why I love this car, is that glorious engine note. I mean, the performance, yes, the looks, yes, but it is primarily all about that glorious engine. What else can I tell you? Well, by modern standards, the brakes are okay, but they're not wonderful. For example, if you compare this thing to, my Shelby GT350, for example, the brakes in the Shelby are about twice the size, literally twice the size, and the braking performance is more than twice as good. But this is competent. I mean, you can haul this thing down from a $140 on the highway without going completely white knuckle, unlike, say, a Testarossa, which is a bit more sketchy. The suspension is quite good. This has the active suspension. It's got 2 modes. It's cushy and the sport, and it has these little actuators on it which adjust it. This was one of the first cars that did active suspension like that, and it works okay. I mean, with the Targa Top, it does shake and shimmy a little bit, so there's only so much awesomeness you're ever going to get out of the handling compared to a modern sports car. But it handles quite well for what it is. It is quite light. Virtually all the car is aluminum aside from the chassis. And it's, I think, 3,200 pounds, which by today's standards is doing pretty good. but you know, it's the handling is good, the brakes are good, but this car isn't really about thrashing the crap out of it on the track. I mean, just let this moron get out of my way. Sometime today would be good. So this car isn't really a track rat. I mean, yeah, they had the 355 Challenge, which actually was a very good race car for the time. And like I say, if you want to track the shit out of it or hit the twisties every Sunday, get the Berlinetta. It's a better car, and put, you know, some race coil, put like Moten coilovers on it, and it's a very competent track car and bigger brakes. But to me, that's not really what this car is about. This car is about being an excellent sports car, you know, hitting the twisties at a spirited pace, but not actually sliding the thing around all the time. It's about cruising. It's about going on a road trip. Like this car, you can put 1,000 miles on this car in like a day, and you're not going to be completely destroyed physically. Whereas a lot of more hardcore cars, you will start to feel it quite a bit. Even the Shelby is much more harsh than this car to go on a long cruise with. I mean, it's still an excellent car. It's just more of a track weapon than the 355 is, and that's fine. It's just a different car for a different style of driving. This is about enjoying the sun and taking your girl out for dinner. You know, going on a cruise, going to a car show, or just going out for yourself and listening to that amazing engine, at least when you're not stuck behind a fucking dump truck. I had to get at least one F-bomb in there. I wouldn't want YouTube to like me or anything. Anyway, yeah, it's a wonderful car to drive. I like it very, very much. It was a very good buy when I got it, and it still is a very good buy. I think in about 5 or 10 years, these things are going to go up quite a lot in value from where they are now. So from an investment standpoint, yeah, you could do worse. Plus, you know, what do you want? Some stocks and bonds or a Ferrari you can drive? So far as living with it, it really depends what car you buy. Some cars that were not properly maintained and beat on, especially now that the 355 is getting pretty old. It's over 20 years old, at least in the case of this car. They can be nightmares, you know. They can require a bunch of money. Oh, so good. They can require a bunch of money to make happy. So, but if you get a good one that's, you know, been driven and serviced regularly and taken care of, they're actually one of the easier Ferraris to live with. This car in particular, I had a coolant temperature sensor go out. It's been through a clutch. One clutch went away. That was because, you know, that's not typical. I mean, this car only has 23,000 miles. You can expect more than that if you know how to drive. But long story, not to go into the extensively long story as to why this car got its clutch destroyed, but someone who couldn't drive it very well drove it for a while and did some naughty things to it. So, but whatever. I mean, you throw a clutch in it, it's like $2,000 or so for the full clutch kit, which actually isn't that bad as exotics go. If you have like a Lambo or something, it's like 5 or 6. And you know, every 20, 30,000 miles, if you have someone who can't drive, or 40, 50,000 if you know what you're doing, that's not so bad, clutch-wise. Other stuff, the major service is kind of expensive on these cars. It's about $4,500, $5,000, and you need that every 6,000 miles or 2 or 3 years, depending who you ask, to do the timing belts. And you really don't want to ignore that. You don't want to let it sit for 5 years and then go and beat the crap out of it, because if you slip a belt, or you worse yet, break a belt, there's a $30,000 engine rebuild, and you don't want that. So if you're thinking about one of these and you're actually going to drive it to a significant degree, budget, let's say $5,000 or $6,000 a year to keep it happy. And that's not bad. I mean, you know, it's for what it is, for what you're getting out of it, you know, less than $500 a month, I don't think is a particularly ruinous barrier to entry. It's a lot worse for a lot of current exotics, and a lot worse for a lot of vintage exotics. So this one's kind of right in the middle, in the happy place. I mean, it's not like buying a Porsche and changing the oil every 20,000 miles and largely forgetting about it. But it's also not going to make you completely bankrupt if you can afford the car to begin with. So, yeah. And the thing I love most about this car is just this 6-speed gated manual gearbox. It's so involving. It's so enjoyable to drive. Yeah, paddles are faster. I don't care. Paddles are stupid. Paddles are video game shit. If I'm getting paid to drive a race car professionally, yeah, give me paddles. I want to win. I don't want to miss shifts. But that's not what I'm doing here. I'm out here on this beautiful sunny day. It's like 80 degrees in September, driving around a lake in a bright red Ferrari, having the time of my goddamn life, and I want to row my own gears when I'm doing that, god damn it. I don't want to sit there and go, oh, that's boring, and there's no skill involved. Driving this car, this is the last car that still traces a lot of its DNA to the older V8 Ferraris. You know, it still kind of looks like a 328 or a 308. It still has like the similar ducts and scoops on the sides, and the nose is vaguely reminiscent of it. It's one of the last cars that Pininfarina really had pretty much free reign over the design of, and before Ferrari started sticking all their wind tunnel crap into it. And I think that just makes for a more enjoyable car to look at and to drive. Now this car does have aero on it. You know, Ferrari was still pretty big about trading on their F1 scruples, so it is a flat bottom car. It's got a diffuser, and it doesn't have any lift or anything at speed. It's quite stable. But it also doesn't have crazy downforce because, well, it's a street car and it doesn't need it. So it is a completely reasonable, you know, enjoy it every day if you want to kind of street car. And that's what I wanted when I bought a Ferrari, and that's what I got. And I just take a minute talk about maintaining these things properly, as I was just mentioning. You can see here, I'm going pretty slow because there's more on in front of me, but I mean, it's cool, running cool as a cucumber, as you can see. Just a little bit under 180 degrees. Coolant, oil temperature is cool. Got plenty of oil pressure, over 70 even at low revs. That is how you want. Let me get this back on. Oh, this is undignified. There we go. All right. That is how you want a Ferrari to run, full stop. If you have an old Ferrari and it's running hot and, you know, it's pissed off and it's in the red, and when you're cruising or you're stopped in traffic, something's wrong with it. Find a good independent mechanic, like me, for example, and say, please fix it. And I will be happy to do that for you. And then your car will run nice and cool like mine does. How do you make it run that cool? Well, there are tricks. I mean, there's a lot of guys who will just throw parts at making Ferraris, especially early Ferraris, run well, and they'll, you know, break out the massive aluminum radiators and all that kind of stuff. And in some cases, that is what you need to do. But in others, you know, you do this crap for 20 years and you learn a trick or two so far as making these cars run the way they should, even in climates that are very un-Italian, shall we say. But yeah, this one runs great. You know, I give it a good going through once a year, you know, but it's never really given me much shit. You know, nothing has ever really broken. It has a few idiosyncrasies, like a lot of the interior panels suffered from the sticky, melty crap. When this car was made, Ferrari covered all the plastic panels with this kind of goop, which when it was new just made the plastic feel a little bit more higher end. But over time, that stuff starts to break down and gets really sticky and nasty, so you got to take all that stuff off with denatured alcohol, and then, you know, there's little stuff like that, which you have to live with. and deal with if you care. But really, it's not really that bad to deal with. Just as a car, not even, without putting the as exotics go modifier in there. It's just not that big of a hassle in most cases. Now, there are beater cars that are a pain in the ass, and the worst thing you can do is buy yourself a cheap Ferrari, because it's going to cost probably as much as you paid for it again to make it run properly, or you're just never going to drive it. It's going to be sitting in the garage broken forever. So if you're in the market, it is better to buy a middle range car or a middle upper quality car, spend a few more bucks when you buy the thing, and not have to immediately start throwing piles of money into making it run right. Best thing you can do with one of these cars is have a good independent do a PPI on it, a pre-purchase inspection. Even if you gotta reimburse them for a plane ticket or something to have them fly out there, if you have a mechanic you trust, it is well worth spending $1,000 to have someone go look at a car and say, okay, well, here's all the horror stories, here's all the shit you're gonna have to fix. And then not only are you in a better position for bargaining with the dealer or the owner, you're not going into a blind. It's not, okay, well, I'm driving the car for 500 miles and the transmission explodes, and how much are those? Oh, about 10 grand. So, yeah, you definitely want to do your homework if you're going to buy, well, any classic car, but in particular an exotic like this one. But if you have the bucks and you want a sound investment that you can enjoy, that's insured, so if someone crashes into it, you get all your money back. Yeah, like I say, it's a hell of a lot more interesting than stocks, and generally you see a bigger return on a smaller amount of money. Like 100 grand, say, isn't going to get you rich in the stock market unless you get really lucky or get pre-IPO stock or something. But you will probably double your money over 10 years if you buy the right car like this. So, plus you get to drive a Ferrari for 10 years. That's fun. Let me tell you, it is. So I've been driving this one for 10 years since I bought it, and I still love it to pieces. Getting into this car is still an event, something I look forward to. It's just a joyous thing to drive. So yeah, that's the Ferrari 355 GTS. I hope you've enjoyed coming for a little ride here with us, and feel free to check out my other videos. Like this one if you like it, and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more.